There is a moment in every woman's life when love doesn't end with drama. It ends with words that sound normal but change everything inside you. At first, he feels like the right person. He talks in a way that makes you feel safe, noticed, and chosen. Nothing feels forced. Nothing feels wrong. It feels natural, almost like it was meant to be, but slowly, without any big incident, something starts to shift. His energy becomes a little distant. His replies become a little uncertain. And his words, they start carrying a different weight. Not harsh, not rude, just unclear. And the strange part is, you don't feel rejected at first. You feel confused. And confusion is dangerous because it makes you stay longer than you should. Then come the lines that change everything. I'm not ready for anything serious. I don't know what I want right now. I don't want to hurt you. You deserve better than me. On the surface, these sound honest, even respectful. But if you listen closely, they are not building love, they are removing responsibility. And this is where most women get emotionally trapped. They don't leave because nothing bad happened. They stay because nothing clear was said. So they start trying harder, loving deeper, waiting longer, hoping clarity will come later. But here is the truth most people realize too late. A man who is aligned with you does not leave you guessing. His words don't create anxiety. They create direction. So if you slow down and really listen, you will notice something powerful. These sentences are not random emotional moments. They are signals. They are soft exits spoken in polite language. And before you get emotionally deeper, you need to understand this clearly. There are 5 things a man might say that are not meant to confuse you, not meant to test you. They are meant to show you the truth you are trying not to see. When a man says, "I'm not ready for anything serious," it is one of those sentences that sounds simple on the surface, but it carries a lot more meaning underneath. Many women hear this and think it is just timing, or maybe he is scared, or maybe he just hasn't experienced the right kind of love yet. So instead of stepping back, they step closer. They try to understand him, support him, and sometimes even prove to him that love with them would feel different. But the truth is, readiness is not something someone magically develops because the right person shows up. Readiness is a personal state, not a relationship project. When a man is truly ready, you don't have to decode it. You feel it in his actions, in his consistency, in the way he shows up without confusion. But when he says he is not ready, he is already telling you something important about his emotional availability. It means he is not in a place where he can give structure, commitment, or long-term clarity. And this is where many women get emotionally stuck, because they start living in potential instead of reality. They think about who he could be instead of who he is right now. So they wait, they adjust, they lower their expectations, and they start accepting less, hoping it will turn into more. But love doesn't grow from waiting alone. It grows from 2 people meeting at the same level of readiness. If one person is unsure and the other is fully invested, the connection slowly becomes heavy on one side and light on the other. And over time, that imbalance creates confusion, overthinking, and emotional exhaustion. A man who is ready does not need long explanations or emotional persuasion to move forward. He is already moving in that direction naturally. So when someone tells you clearly that they are not ready, the most important thing is not to translate it into hope, but to take it as information. Because in relationships, clarity is not something you create through effort. It is something you recognize through honesty. And if you ignore that honesty, you don't end up building love. You end up building attachment around uncertainty. When a man says, "I don't know what I want," it may sound harmless at first, almost like he is just being honest about his confusion. Many women interpret this as a temporary phase, something that will clear up with time, patience, or emotional support. So instead of stepping back, they step in the role of helping him figure it out. They start showing more care, giving more attention, and trying to become the answer to his uncertainty. But the deeper truth is, this sentence often creates more emotional damage than it looks like on the surface. Because while he is not knowing, the other person starts overthinking everything. Every message, every silence, every small shift in tone becomes something to analyze. And slowly, Without realizing it, you are no longer in a relationship. You are in a waiting room for clarity that never arrives. A man who is truly ready may take time to decide, but he does not stay emotionally stuck around you. There is a difference between taking time and being emotionally unavailable. Taking time still has direction. It still moves forward, even if slowly. But I don't know what I want usually has no direction at all. It keeps things open-ended, which may feel soft, but it is actually very unstable emotionally. And this is where many women lose themselves because they start adjusting their behavior to become more clear for him. They become more understanding, more patient, more available, thinking that if they are just a little better, a little calmer, a little more loving, he will finally decide. But clarity cannot be created by someone else. It has to come from within. And while he is figuring himself out, you often start losing clarity about your own emotional needs. You begin accepting inconsistency as normal. You begin normalizing confusion as a phase of love. But love that constantly keeps you guessing is not love with direction. It is emotional uncertainty disguised as potential. A man who values you deeply may have questions about timing, but he does not keep you in emotional limbo. He does not let you sit in confusion for long periods of time, because when someone is intentional, their actions start aligning with clarity sooner or later. So when you hear, "I don't know what I want," the most important thing is not to take it as something you need to fix. It is to take it as information about where you stand in his emotional world. Because if you stay too long in someone else's confusion, you slowly disconnect from your own clarity. And losing your own clarity is always more expensive than losing someone who was never sure about you in the first place. When a man says, "I can't give you what you deserve," it often sounds like honesty wrapped in respect. On the surface, it can even feel mature, like he is acknowledging your value and being responsible enough not to waste your time. Many women hear this and feel understood, almost appreciated, because it doesn't come across as rejection in a harsh way. But if you look deeper, this sentence carries a quiet emotional distance that is very important to understand. Because while it sounds like he is respecting you, what he is also doing is placing a boundary around his effort, his commitment, and his emotional availability. In many situations, this is not a man who is confused about your worth. In fact, he may genuinely see your value. But seeing value and choosing to match it are two very different things. When someone says they cannot give you what you deserve, they are often telling you that they are not willing, not ready, or not capable at this moment to meet that level of emotional responsibility. And instead of directly saying, "I don't want to step up," it comes out in a softer, more acceptable form. This is why it feels so confusing, because it does not sound like rejection, it sounds like limitation. The emotional trap here is subtle. Many women respond to this by lowering their expectations instead of raising their boundaries. They start thinking, maybe he just needs time, or maybe I can accept less for now and it will grow later. So they stay, hoping consistency will eventually replace uncertainty. But in reality, a man's effort does not increase because you are patient. Effort increases when someone is internally driven to show up, not when someone is waiting for them to change. A man who is aligned with you does not focus on what he cannot give. He focuses on what he is willing to build. Even if he is not perfect, he communicates intention, not limitation. There is a big emotional difference between someone who says, "I want to become better for you," and someone who says, "I can't be what you need." One is growth-oriented. The other is exit-oriented. And this is where emotional clarity becomes important. Because when you hear this sentence and stay anyway, you often start shrinking your own needs. You begin adjusting your emotional expectations to fit his limitations. Over time, this creates imbalance. You give more, you expect less, and you slowly normalize inconsistency as something you should be grateful for. So this statement is not just about him acknowledging your worth. It is about him revealing his limits. And the most important part is not to argue with it, not to interpret it differently, and not to turn it into hope. It is to understand it as clarity. Because when someone tells you they cannot give you what you deserve, The real question is not why they can't. The real question is why you would choose to stay in a place where you are already being told the limit of your emotional future. When a man says, "You deserve better than me," it often sounds like care. It feels like he is being honest, even selfless, like he is putting your happiness above his own desire to keep you close. In the moment, it can even create a strong emotional pull because it seems like he is stepping back for your good. But if you listen carefully, this sentence is not always about love or respect. Very often it is about emotional distance wrapped in gentle words. At its core, this line usually means he is not willing to rise into the responsibility of the relationship. Instead of saying directly that he cannot meet your emotional needs or is not ready to build something stable, he shifts the focus onto your worth. It sounds flattering, but it quietly removes accountability from him. Because once he says you deserve better, the conversation becomes about you leaving, not about him stepping up. It creates an exit without conflict, a soft ending without hard honesty. This is where many women get emotionally caught, because instead of hearing it as distance, they hear it as a compliment. They start thinking, maybe he really values me, or maybe he just doesn't feel confident enough, and then they do something very common. They start reassuring him. They tell him he is enough. They try to prove that love doesn't require perfection, and they slowly begin to carry the emotional weight of both people. But love is not supposed to be built on convincing someone to stay. A man who is truly invested does not frame your worth as a reason to leave. He frames it as a reason to grow. Instead of saying, "You deserve better than me," he says, "I want to become better for you." That difference may sound small, but emotionally it is everything. One is an ending disguised as kindness. The other is a beginning built on intention. And over time, if you stay in this kind of dynamic, something subtle starts happening. You begin shrinking your expectations so the relationship can feel easier to maintain. You start accepting less effort, less consistency, and less emotional presence because part of you is still trying to prove that you don't need better. But deep down, this creates imbalance because when one person is stepping back emotionally while the other is stepping forward emotionally, the connection stops feeling like partnership and starts feeling like emotional carrying. The most important truth here is simple but powerful. A man who truly wants you does not use your worth as a reason to exit your life. He uses it as a reason to invest more, show up more, and become more stable for you. So when you hear this sentence, don't just focus on how respectful it sounds. Focus on what it actually creates, distance or direction, because real love does not politely step away from what it values. It moves closer and builds. When a man says, "I'm not the relationship type," it is one of the clearest statements you can hear, even if it doesn't feel heavy in the moment. It often sounds casual, like he is just describing his personality or past experiences. Some women even take it lightly at first, thinking maybe it's just how he is right now, or maybe the right person will change that mindset. But this sentence is not just a passing comment, it is a self-definition. And when someone defines themselves like this, they are telling you how they see their emotional patterns, not just how they feel in that moment. What this really means is that he does not naturally move toward commitment, structure, or emotional responsibility in relationships. It is not about you specifically. It is about his lifestyle, habits, and internal comfort zone. And the most important part to understand is this. People usually behave in alignment with how they define themselves. So if someone believes they are not the relationship type, they will unconsciously avoid the behaviors that make relationships stable, such as consistency, clarity, emotional presence, and long-term effort. This is where many women get stuck because they don't hear it as a final truth. They hear it as something flexible. So they start adapting themselves to fit into his world. They lower expectations, reduce emotional demands, and convince themselves that love can slowly change someone's identity. But real change does not come from pressure or patience alone. It comes from internal desire. If a man is not internally motivated to be in a relationship, no amount of emotional investment from the other side will naturally transform that. And slowly, what happens in this dynamic is emotional imbalance. One person starts playing the role of partner, while the other stays emotionally non-committal. You start giving stability while receiving unpredictability. You start planning emotionally for two, while he remains comfortable living without structure. This creates confusion because the connection still exists, but the foundation is not equal. A man who is genuinely ready may not be perfect, but he does not reject the idea of relationship itself. He may struggle with timing, communication, or emotional depth, but he does not label himself as someone who avoids commitment altogether, because intention changes language, and language reveals mindset. So when you hear, "I'm not the relationship type," the most important thing is not to take it as a challenge or a phase. It is to take it as clarity. Because if someone has already identified themselves outside of the space you want, your effort does not bring them closer to it. It only brings you deeper into waiting for a version of them that may never exist in reality. And in the end, the strongest decision you can make is not to argue with someone's identity, but to respect it. Because when someone tells you who they are, the safest thing you can do for your emotional peace is believe them the first time. At the end of the day, love is not as complicated as it sometimes feels. What makes it complicated is not the situation itself, but the way we hold on to words that were already clear from the beginning. When a man speaks, he is not only expressing feelings, he is revealing direction. And if you listen carefully, without adding hope on top of confusion, you will always see where things are really going. Because real love does not keep you guessing. It does not leave you analyzing every sentence, every silence, every shift in tone. Real love gives you something very simple: peace. And if peace is missing, then no amount of attempt can replace it. So if anything you heard today felt familiar, don't ignore it. Don't rush it away. Just pause and ask yourself one honest question. Am I staying because I am truly valued, or because I am still hoping he will change? That answer will tell you more than anything else. And remember this: walking away from confusion is not losing love. It is choosing clarity. It is choosing emotional respect. It is choosing yourself before you become emotionally tired, trying to understand someone who already showed you who they are. If this message made you think differently, don't just watch it and move on. Take a moment for yourself. Reflect on your own situation. And if it helped you see things more clearly, make sure to stay connected for more real conversations like this, where we don't chase fantasy, we talk about truth. Because sometimes the strongest love story you can ever build is not with someone else, it is the one where you finally stop ignoring your own peace.